Well, I got done with Hot D, and I can say it's more good than bad. It was fairly slow. Some people were really well satisfied with the pacing of this episode, but I thought it really dragged on. But there are a lot of redemptive features. So, what is occurring? Well, without spoiling too much, essentially, we're going to get a resolution between Daemon and Viserys, and a lot of the episode actually revolves around them. And one other critical feature is, of course, that Rhaenyra needs to pick someone to marry. And a lot of the humor and plot of probably three-fourths the episode is revolving around that and how Daemon plays in terms of these courtship rituals. Was it good? Well, I think the jokes got a little bit stronger. They're still not very good. And I do think one of them went on way too long. They really needed to cut that one out. At least in the beginning scenes, it was fairly interesting where they're going to go with it. But I should note that the book is actually kind of fuzzy in my mind. So I'm not even relying upon Fire and Blood. So I should have actually been really open to a lot of the surprises, but I predicted most of the episode. That was a little frustrating. So even though they do a attempt at kind of faking you out, and make you rethink a few of the scenes, really, by the halfway point, you're going to be able to map out a lot of the episode, which I thought took a lot of the narrative energy out of it. Overall, the performances were fairly strong.
Nexus
In this one, Matt
beings, or
Smith just
using the
looks a little bit
words
different. They've
dimension,
actually
worlds,
redesigned the character a
universes,
little
and
bit. I
timelines
don't know how that makes
interchangeably.
sense in terms of
Unfortunately,
world
they then
building. Did he
invent
just
incredibly
take
powerful
time out to get a different look? I don't know. That was a little weird, but he does look a little differently. And yes, he is persistently kind of putting on the charm, being a hustler, but I do think this was more digestible than in the past. Some fans are speculating that he's actually impotent. I don't know if that's true, but he is definitely doing a lot of seduction. I'm going to leave it open to who he is seducing, but probably very obvious, but I'm not going to confirm. So there's a lot of seduction scenes, a lot of the court politics, and Corliss, I don't think this is much of a spoiler, is kind of absent this episode. The character's not absent, but the actor doesn't really appear. Apparently, the Sea Snake is doing some moves behind the scenes, and that's upsetting Viserys and Otto Hightower. The roles are being performed splendidly, but I still felt a few gaps in terms of what they needed to do with the character. I will say, though, Viserys does make a bit of a U turn because they're often just making him a little bit too weak in a lot of the episodes. Then he's very strong. There's a lot of inconsistency. This one I felt was the most consistent we've got with Viserys. So I think that was very overdue for them to sort of course correct on Viserys. They do a few tricky things with the character, but that makes sense if you've been paying attention that he's essentially been suffering a few diseases, and that continues onward in this episode. So that made sense. I don't think they're trying to do any character assassination. And I would say Alicent is a little bit more active in this episode, whereas usually she's just been doing a lot of background advising. I still found it a little curious, the basic premise of the episode, which is that apparently incest among the Targaryens is still sort of looked down upon. That just doesn't make sense to me. It didn't make sense to me in Game of Thrones. It definitely doesn't make sense here, so I don't quite understand how that's working out as an issue or problem. So that's a big question mark in my head if this is really working with the lore or not. But apparently, incest is still very controversial in the Seven Kingdoms. So that was a little strange. So overall, it was good stuff. There weren't too many dragons here, though. A lot of sex. There was this huge orgy scene, and it went on for quite a while. It had a very eyes wide shut kind of flavor. But this is a female director doing the work. Did I see any noticeable difference between this and the other episodes, especially Game of Thrones, which were also very heavy with sex and intrigue? No, I didn't spot many differences. The editing style was a little bit differently, but I guess that's just the house style that they're going to try to adopt with Hot D. And I think overall it was explicit enough for its purposes. It probably will be a little light for some viewers, whereas Game of Thrones was full on explicit. So nothing like the Ramsay scenes and him having sex with multiple women, but it came fairly close. There is a lot of nudity and a lot of going back between sexual partners, but even that is sort of the background to what Rhaenyra is doing and where she fits in to the larger politics of what Viserys wants. So that was a little fascinating, but I do think it dragged here and there. So obviously, even with sex scenes, they can be boring if they're not filmed a certain way or they're not paced at a certain level. That was a little all over the place. But not to bury the lead, the final scenes with Viserys were really strong. I thought maybe he just gave a kind of mild rebuke, but no, he actually does two major bitch slaps, and they are really epic. I thought they were perhaps a little melodramatic, but it made sense that he's going to overcompensate for being a little too nice. I'm not going to name who the targets are, but some of them should be obvious. In fact, I was shocked by one of them. I thought, like, oh, okay, that makes sense. He's putting that guy in his place. But no, he went a lot further. So that was pretty satisfying. So the final scenes were really, really strong, and I do think they redeem a lot of the episode. There's also a major Easter egg with the Azor Ahai prophecy. So if you're willing to wait for the very, very end, I think that should have come much earlier, but that's me. So the structure is a little weird. It is unduly slow for no reason. I would be honest and say this was a little stronger than the, I guess for lack of a word, corresponding Rings of Power episode. But I'm actually excited for what they're going to do with Rings of Power. Whereas here, they are setting up things, they're major things, but it really could have been just a half an episode and really lead us to the next episode. So I'm not super excited for what they're going to do next, but they did lay the groundwork for some interesting developments up ahead. And there we are with Hot D. Continued success, but it was a little too slow this time.